Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into one of the strangest and most uncomfortable chapters of modern history. A time when doctors wore white coats, smiled reassuringly, and then, completely straight-faced, handed out pharmaceutical-grade meth to millions of exhausted suburban housewives like it was Tic Tacs. That's right. Tonight we're exploring the gloriously chaotic world of 1950s diet pills. The era when America decided that the real solution to stress, boredom, postpartum depression, housework, impossible beauty standards, and marriage to a man named Hank was speed. Pharmaceutical speed. Prescribed, encouraged, and often taken between vacuuming and making a ham casserole. So before we dive into this whirlwind, go ahead and like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. No pressure at all, and thank you for suggesting this topic. It means a lot that you share ideas with me. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing the 2 a.m. night owls and the "I swear I'm going to bed right after this." Now, dim those lights, switch on a fan for that soft, soothing white noise, get comfortable and tuck your feet in so the 1950s pharmaceutical salesman can't slide a free sample under your blanket. And as you settle in, let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to be a 1950s housewife, juggling a spotless kitchen, 3 children, a decorative bowl of plastic fruit, and a husband who believes emotional support means patting you twice on the shoulder? Did women really have to vacuum in heels? Did doctors truly hand out meth like party favours? Could you survive a PTA meeting while vibrating at the frequency of a hummingbird? Would you accidentally deep clean the entire house at 3 a.m. because your doctor recommended diet pill kicked in too hard? And what did dieting even mean in an era when every meal was 90% mayonnaise? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in the year 1954. Your hair is curled, your apron is crisp, and your doctor says the only thing standing between you and your goal weight is a tiny pill that will turn you into a cheerful, unstoppable tornado of productivity. Good luck. Welcome to your freshly built suburban paradise, where every driveway has a brand new Chevy, every neighbour smiles too wide, and every emotional problem is quietly stuffed into a decorative throw pillow. You wake up each morning to the smell of percolated coffee and the pressure of maintaining a life so perfect it could shatter like fine china. The first thing you notice about suburbia is the silence. Not peaceful silence, just the eerie, staged kind. Like the pause before someone asks if you've tried their famous ambrosia salad. The streets are lined with identical homes, each painted in colours the developers insist will evoke tranquility, which is code for shades that won't upset the HOA. Even the birds seem to chirp on cue, like they were hired through a small casting agency. You step outside to fetch the morning paper and immediately sense the eyes of Mrs. Hargrove across the street, peering through her blinds like a suburban cryptid. She waves too enthusiastically. You wave back, because that's the law here. Your lawn becomes the first battleground of your suburban life. A perfectly trimmed lawn isn't just grass, it's a moral compass, a scoreboard, and a non-verbal resume. The neighbour 2 doors down cuts his every 48 hours with military precision, creating sharp green lines that would make a drafting instructor weep with joy. Yours is acceptable, but only barely. You can already hear the whispers. She's new, she must not understand how we edge the sidewalks here. You begin to suspect the entire block has a group chat dedicated to lawn maintenance. Let's talk about your home. It's spotless. Almost aggressively so, but that's not the comforting kind of cleanliness. It's the kind that reminds you of a department store display, where touching anything feels like committing a misdemeanor. Your throw pillows are arranged at perfect 45-degree angles because you saw it in better homes and gardens, and now you're terrified of deviating even 1 degree. But beneath all this curated calm lies an unspoken truth. Suburbia demands performance, and you're always on stage. Inside your kitchen, you discover the true heart of suburban life. Appliances, gleaming chrome, pastel plastics, timers that don't make sense, and gadgets designed by engineers who clearly hated women. The pressure cooker hums ominously like it's plotting something. The standing mixer weighs more than a toddler. And then there's the new electric toaster, your pride and joy, which pops toast with such aggression it could double as a weapon. Every device promises to make housework easier. Somehow, none of them do. Next come the neighbours. They arrive in waves, knocking on your door with casseroles, pamphlets, and gentle questions that feel suspiciously like background checks. The women introduce themselves in soft tones, each wearing the same bright smile stretched so tightly you wonder if their faces ache. They ask about your children, even if you don't have any, your husband's job, even if you don't understand what it is, and your preferred brand of floor wax. You begin to realise suburbia runs on gossip the way cars run on gasoline. At some point, you're invited to join a bridge club. You don't know how to play bridge, but that doesn't matter. Half the women there don't either. The game is just camouflage for competitive snacking and passive-aggressive compliments. "Your blouse is lovely," someone says with wide, earnest eyes. Very brave colour choice. You smile back while wondering why the room suddenly feels 10 degrees colder. By afternoon, you've learned one of suburbia's sacred truths. Idleness is suspicious. If you're not actively polishing something, people assume you're depressed, pregnant, or considering communist sympathies. So you dust shelves that were dusted yesterday. You reorganize the pantry by height, then by category, then alphabetically. You iron shirts that were already ironed, and you water the same patch of lawn twice, unsure if the city will fine you or thank you. And just when you finally sit down with a cup of tea, you hear it, the unmistakable sound of small footsteps thundering down the street. Neighbourhood children, roaming in packs like sugar-fueled stampedes. They play hopscotch with the kind of fervour usually reserved for Olympic training, and somehow they always end up in your yard, your pristine yard, the one you've been emotionally tethered to for 3 weeks. You want to shoo them off, but the suburban handbook specifically warns against being the cranky yard lady, so you let them trample your sanity along with the turf. By evening you look around your immaculate home, inhale the faint scent of furniture polish, and feel a tiny crack form in your soul. Suburbia isn't a place, it's a performance art piece, and you are both the artist and the medium. And tomorrow, the show begins again. Let's move on, because life in suburbia is only the beginning of the performance you're expected to maintain. Your doctor greets you with a warm handshake, a reassuring smile, and an alarming enthusiasm for miracle pills. He doesn't ask how you're sleeping or whether you're stressed. He simply hands you a sample bottle filled with tiny pastel tablets that promise energy, weight loss, and a complete disregard for the concept of rest. The doctor's office itself is the first warning sign, though you don't know it yet. Everything is decorated in muted beige tones meant to soothe you, but instead they look like the colour palette of mild disappointment. A framed diploma hangs on the wall, slightly crooked, as if even it is unsure whether it should be proud to be here. The magazines on the waiting room table are all 6 months old, and filled with smiling women vacuuming in pearls. You sit quietly, listening to the ticking clock, which somehow sounds like it's judging you for not being more productive. When the nurse calls your name, she moves with the brisk efficiency of someone who has already had 3 cups of coffee and is strongly considering a 4th. She weighs you, measures you, and writes cryptic notes that make you feel like your body has failed a pop quiz you didn't know you were taking. Then she ushers you into the exam room, where you sit on a crinkly paper sheet that clings to your legs like a needy ghost. Your doctor enters moments later, smelling faintly of aftershave and misplaced confidence. He doesn't bother sitting behind the desk. Instead, he perches on the edge of his stool, leans forward like a man about to deliver good news, and asks a single question. Feeling tired lately? It's less a medical inquiry and more of a sales pitch. You nod before you can stop yourself. Who isn't tired in the 1950s? Exhaustion is basically a patriotic duty. His eyes light up like someone just told him there was a free golf trip hidden under the exam table. Well, he says, opening a drawer with dramatic flair, you're in luck. He pulls out a small glass bottle filled with pastel pills, pink, blue, yellow, like Easter candy but more dangerous. These, he says proudly, will give you pep. You stare at the bottle, wondering why the word pep is delivered with such reverence, as if he's offering you the Holy Grail and not something that looks suspiciously like pharmaceutical confetti. You try to ask what's in them, but he waves the question away with the confidence of a man who's not once read the warning label on anything he's ever prescribed. Safe, he insists. Perfectly safe. Housewives love them. You'll lose weight, feel energized, and get twice as much done in half the time. You suspect the same could be said about strapping a car battery to your nervous system, but you smile politely. Before you know it, he's scribbling a prescription with the enthusiasm of someone signing an autograph. He tears the paper from the pad, hands it to you, and pats your shoulder like you're a golden retriever. He's just congratulated for learning a new trick. Take one in the morning, he says, or two if you're feeling sluggish. You nod again, mostly because you're afraid that if you don't, he'll offer you a booster shot of something even more alarming. Then comes the part that truly seals your fate. He leans in conspiratorially, lowering his voice to a whisper even though the room is empty. Between you and me, he says, these pills are very popular among the ladies. They say it feels like flying. You don't know what to do with this information. You didn't come here to fly. You came here because suburbia is slowly squeezing your soul like a stress ball. He sends you off with a pamphlet titled A Happier, Healthier You, featuring a woman smiling so hard you worry she may have cracked a molar. As you walk back into the waiting room, the other women glance at the prescription slip in your hand and give small, knowing nods. This is the secret handshake of 1950s housewives. The quiet exchange of pastel pills that promise salvation in tablet form. On your way out, the receptionist beams at you with the too bright smile of someone who has definitely taken one of these pills today. Have a peppy afternoon, she chirps. You step into the sunlight, clutching the bottle, not yet aware that your doctor has just handed you the key to a roller coaster you didn't sign up to ride. And now that you've met the doctor, it's time to see what happens when you actually take the pill. You take your first pill with your morning orange juice, expecting mild motivation. Instead, your entire nervous system turns into a marching band. Suddenly, your kitchen has never been cleaner, your thoughts have never been faster, and you're absolutely certain you can reorganize the entire pantry before lunch, alphabetically. At first, the change feels subtle, a little tingle behind your eyes, a gentle hum in your fingertips, the sense that maybe, just maybe, you could accomplish a full day's work before finishing your toast. But within minutes, the hum becomes a buzz, the buzz becomes a vibration, and the vibration becomes the unmistakable sensation that you might actually achieve flight if you flap your arms hard enough. Your body feels weightless. Your mind feels boundless. Your to-do list suddenly seems like a delightful challenge, instead of the slow suffocation it was yesterday. The kitchen becomes your personal arena. You don't just wash the dishes, you assault them with the intensity of a Marine in basic training. You scrub the counter until it shines like it's auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. You dust the windowsills, even though you just cleaned them last night in a burst of anxiety-fueled insomnia. Everything smells like lemon, metal, and triumph. Your thoughts begin racing faster than your hands, You start thinking about reorganizing the spice cabinet, then the pantry, then the entire house. You decide that today is the day you finally tackle the junk drawer, the Bermuda Triangle of domestic life. One moment you're holding a stray bobby pin. The next you're knee-deep in old receipts, rubber bands, free promotional pens and pieces of mysterious hardware you're pretty sure belong to an appliance you no longer own. Every sound seems amplified. The ticking kitchen clock is suddenly aggressive. The refrigerator hum is now a baseline to your productivity anthem. Even the birds outside sound like they're cheering you on. You briefly consider getting them tiny pom-poms. Then comes the multitasking. You're no longer doing one thing at a time. You're washing dishes, making coffee, reorganizing your pantry, and contemplating repainting the entire kitchen, all simultaneously. Your mind leaps from topic to topic like a caffeinated rabbit. Should you switch to a different detergent? Maybe join a sewing circle? What is the optimal shelving arrangement for canned goods? Shouldn't all the labels face the same direction? Yes. Yes, they should. At some point, you stop responding to reality and begin responding exclusively to internal impulses. You start alphabetizing canned foods. Then you sort them by size, then by meal potential. You briefly consider sorting them by emotional tone, beans for stability, peaches for joy, condensed soup for existential dread. You abandon that idea when you realize it might take too long. You're dimly aware that this isn't normal. You're moving too fast, thinking too fast. But the pill's effects feel so powerful, so invigorating, that you don't care. After all, isn't this what productivity is supposed to feel like? Isn't this how those smiling magazine women get everything done? Maybe they're not naturally cheerful. Maybe they're also vibrating like beehives full of espresso. By mid-morning you're sweating lightly. Not enough to be alarming, but enough to make you feel like you just finished a brisk jog despite never leaving the kitchen. Your heart taps a quick jitterbug rhythm. Your hands tremble slightly each time you reach for a new cleaning product. You consider calling your doctor to ask if this is normal, but then you decide you're far too busy sanitizing the grout lines with a toothbrush. Eventually, you catch sight of yourself in the chrome reflection of the toaster. Your pupils are huge. Your hair looks frazzled, like you've run through a wind tunnel. Your apron is dusted with flour even though you have not baked anything. For a moment, just a brief moment, you wonder if you should slow down. Sit, breathe, drink water. But then your eyes drift toward a slightly crooked picture frame on the wall, and your entire soul compels you to fix it immediately. This new version of you, hyper-focused, hyper-productive, hyper-everything, feels unstoppable. You've become a domestic superhero, fueled by a pharmaceutical sidekick that absolutely should not be legal, but somehow is. And underneath the thrill is something else too. Fear, the quiet whispering kind that tells you this level of energy can't possibly be free. But for now you push that thought aside. After all, you've got shelves to organize, and now that you know what the pill feels like, it's time to learn how the world around you reacts to a housewife running at the speed of sound. Magazines arrive full of cheerful, wide-eyed women who appear to be experiencing joy, but are clearly oscillating at 800 RPM. Ads promise that all-natural pep will help you stay slim, productive, and blissfully unbothered by your husband's questionable golf habits. The subtext is simple. Happiness is chemical, darling. These ads aren't subtle. They're practically shouting at you from every glossy page. You flip through Ladies' Home Journal or Good Housekeeping, and there they are, brightly lit pastel-coloured scenes of domestic bliss. Perfectly coiffed women in aprons grin directly at you. Their smiles stretch so wide and so toothy, they look like they're trying to escape their own faces. They vacuum with supernatural enthusiasm. They pour coffee with the precision of a neurosurgeon. They fold laundry with an intensity that suggests the fate of the nation depends on crease alignment. Every image feels like it's vibrating. The headlines are even more shameless. Tired, try PEP, a slimmer, happier. You, now in convenient tablet form. Be the best wife you can be, with a little help. You start noticing a pattern. The ads aren't selling pills. They're selling obedience, tranquility, productivity. They're selling a version of womanhood that looks suspiciously like a Stepford prototype, minus the robots. One ad features a woman gleefully lifting a roasting pan the size of a toddler, her arm muscles apparently carved by angels. Thanks to pep tabs, the caption reads, "Eleanor never runs out of energy." You look at Eleanor's eyes for too long and become convinced she hasn't slept since Truman left office. She's glowing, yes, but not in a healthy way. More like a light bulb that's about to pop. Another ad shows a woman surrounded by sparkling dishes, perfectly upright children, and a husband reading the newspaper with an approving smirk. The text underneath says, "She gets everything done with pep." Translation, she's chemically enhanced. And he's thrilled because she hasn't yelled at him for leaving his socks under the bed since he started golfing on Saturdays. The magazines know exactly what they're doing. They weaponize insecurity with ruthless efficiency. Feeling tired? You must be doing something wrong. Struggling with housework? Maybe you're not trying hard enough. Gained a few pounds? Unacceptable? But don't worry, they assure you a fix exists, and it comes in a charming little bottle with a bow-tied pharmacist on the label. It's scientific, it's modern. It's part of the American dream. You begin to notice the ads everywhere, on billboards, in newspapers, even tucked into recipe books like an encouragement from Betty Crocker herself. It's as if the entire advertising industry met in a smoky boardroom and agreed that women should operate at hummingbird speed while maintaining the complexion of a porcelain doll. And if that requires methamphetamine derivatives, well, that's between you and your doctor, sweetie. What makes the ads so insidious is how relatable they pretend to be. They show women juggling errands, kids, cooking, cleaning, sewing, ironing, and maintaining an emotional climate stable enough to reassure everyone that yes, the Cold War is terrifying, but at least the casserole won't burn. And there, in the corner, is always a pastel pill bottle, your trusty sidekick in the battle against everyday life. The messaging evolves from suggestion to expectation. Before long, PEP is portrayed as a requirement of good housekeeping. After all, what kind of wife chooses fatigue when pharmaceutical vigour is available at every drugstore? The ads smile sweetly as they ask the question, but the judgment beneath the surface is loud enough to rattle your teeth. Even the doctors get cameo appearances in the ads, serious men with clipboards and misleading confidence. They're depicted nodding knowingly, handing pills to grateful women as though dispensing spiritual enlightenment. Doctor recommended becomes shorthand for socially mandatory. And who are you to question a man in a white coat who has presumably taken at least one class on metabolism? The most unnerving ads are the ones targeting your emotions directly. They whisper that happiness isn't just attainable, it's purchasable. That inner peace is no longer a philosophical pursuit, it's a sponsored product. All you have to do is swallow the brightly coloured promise of better days, and just like that, the ads reshape your expectations without you noticing. You don't just want to be productive, you want to be radiantly productive, effortlessly slim, endlessly cheerful. And if you can't achieve all that alone, well, sweetie, thank goodness someone invented speed. Now that you've seen how the ads rope you in, it's time to watch what happens when you put all that marketing into practice by attending your first PTA meeting while buzzing like a neon sign. You walk into the school gym prepared to sit quietly. Instead, you accidentally volunteer for 6 committees, rewrite the bake sale plan, and suggest repainting the entire school. Parents stare at you with admiration and mild fear. The gym smells like old varnish, gym socks, and the faint despair of every child who has ever attempted a rope climb. Metal folding chairs scrape across the hardwood floor, forming neat rows that look like they were arranged by someone with only a passing understanding of geometry. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, flickering just enough to make you question whether they're malfunctioning or you're hallucinating. You take a seat near the back, clutching a notepad you don't remember grabbing, and tell yourself you're just here to observe, to blend in, to be normal. But the pill has other plans. The principal steps up to the podium, clears his throat, and begins droning about community involvement and fundraising initiatives. His voice is monotone, the kind of tone that has been scientifically engineered to lull even the most caffeinated adult into a light coma. You nod politely, ready to sink into the safety of anonymity, when a bolt of energy surges through you like someone plugged your spine into the gym's PA system. Suddenly you're raising your hand, then both hands. Then somehow you're standing. Words leave your mouth faster than your brain can track. You hear yourself volunteering to lead the bake sale, even though you haven't baked anything more complex than toast since '52. You propose expanding the fundraiser into a full-fledged carnival. You recommend reorganizing the PTA's entire filing system, which you have never seen but now feel morally responsible for. Other mothers turn around to stare at you, their eyebrows raised so high they're nearly touching their hairlines. Their reactions range from impressed to terrified, mostly terrified. One whispers, "She's ambitious," with the same tone someone might use to describe a tornado. The principal pauses his speech, blinking rapidly as he tries to process your barrage of suggestions. "Well, that's certainly enthusiastic," he says. His smile is tight, like he's trying very hard not to ask if you're okay. But before he can continue, you're already proposing new playground equipment, updated school uniforms, and a mural for the cafeteria painted by local artists, which for some reason you've also volunteered to coordinate. Your thoughts are sprinting. You have drawn diagrams on your notepad. You have created timelines. You have color-coded things that do not require color coding. You look down and realize you've written the phrase, "Efficiency is key," in all caps across the top of the page, like you've joined a productivity cult. Then comes the moment you truly frighten the group. You suggest that the PTA should meet twice a week instead of once a month. A woman gasps. Someone drops a pencil. The treasurer clutches her pearls. You're pretty sure the gym teacher crosses himself. You try to slow down. Really, you do. You fold your hands neatly in your lap and take a deep breath. It lasts approximately half a second before you're waving at the principal again, this time proposing an inter-school collaboration with the neighbouring district. You don't know what that means, but it sounds impressive. Someone writes it down. As the meeting continues, you become aware, dimly, hazily, that you may be doing too much. You can see it on their faces. They admire your enthusiasm, but they also look like they're mentally preparing an escape route. One mother edges her chair slightly away from you, as if your energy is contagious, and she's trying to avoid catching it. Eventually the meeting ends. People gather their coats, murmur their goodbyes, and file out in orderly lines. Meanwhile, you're still standing at the front, flipping through your notes, already planning the next 10 PTA events. The principal approaches you cautiously, like he's handling a small, overly friendly wild animal. "We appreciate your engagement," he says gently. "Just remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Too late. You have sprinted several metaphorical miles already." As you walk home, the crisp air hits your cheeks, cooling the residual glow of your overclocked brain. You clutch your notebook, now filled with enough ideas to power a small non-profit. You feel accomplished, but also unsure whether you should be proud or concerned. Maybe both. And when you get home, feet sore and heart still tapping its own Morse code, you realize something important. The PTA isn't ready for you, but don't worry. Tomorrow you'll be even more productive. Now that you've conquered the PTA, it's time to explore the cultural obsession driving these pills. The 1950s demand for women to be thin enough to look like they could slip through a mail slot. The culture around you insists that the ideal woman weighs as little as a decorative lamp. Magazine covers show cinched waists, impossibly narrow silhouettes, and smiling wives holding jello molds like trophies. And now, thanks to your doctor, you can chase that standard at the speed of light. It doesn't take long to realise that in the 1950s, thinness isn't just an aesthetic preference, it's practically a civic duty. Every magazine, billboard and television commercial presents the same message in pastel colours and soft focus photography. A good woman is a small woman, tiny, delicate, a whisper of a person who floats gracefully between kitchen and living room without disturbing the airflow. The cultural ideal is less healthy, adult human, and more ethereal ghost who can still serve a flawless pot roast. Everywhere you look, waists are cinched to cartoon proportions. Women stand proudly in their wasp waist dresses, smiling like their internal organs aren't being squeezed into a shape best described as geometrically improbable. And yet there they are, glamorous, confident, impossibly coordinated, holding casseroles, vacuuming carpets, pouring coffee, all while maintaining a silhouette that suggests they might blow away in a strong breeze. And of course, you want to match that standard. Who wouldn't when every advertisement whispers that your value depends on your ability to fit into a dress size for a fourth grader? Diets become a national pastime. Grapefruit diets, cottage cheese lunches, dinners consisting of one sensible cracker and a glass of optimism. Women gather at tables to discuss calories with the same intensity men reserve for talking about the World Series. The culture treats hunger like a moral failing and appetite as something to be battled with serrated determination. But even this isn't enough. Enter the diet pill. Suddenly, thinness becomes more accessible, not through deprivation alone, but through chemical enhancement. Why starve when you can swallow a tablet that turns your metabolism into an overcaffeinated jackrabbit? The ads promise that you can drop pounds while still serving your family 3 square meals a day, including dessert because you won't be eating them. And society loves this. Doctors praise modern solutions. Magazines rave about scientific breakthroughs. Friends whisper about how easy it is to shed those stubborn pounds, as though weight loss were a fun little hobby, rather than a deeply emotional pressure cooker wrapped in gingham. The men, of course, remain largely oblivious. Your husband doesn't understand why you're worried. You look fine, he says, without looking up from the sports section. But fine isn't the beauty standard. You're supposed to look spectacular, exceptional, effortlessly slim while also being relentlessly cheerful, calm, nurturing, and wrinkle-free. You're expected to be the living embodiment of a good housekeeping seal of approval. Every time you pass a mirror, you notice something new to critique. A curve here, a softness there, a shadow that wasn't there last week. You begin to see your reflection not as a person, but as a checklist of improvements. And the pill bottle on your dresser promises an easy solution, one bright, colourful capsule at a time. Soon, losing weight becomes less about health and more about performance. The thinner you get, the more praise you receive. Compliments pour in from neighbours and friends like confetti at a parade you never ask for. You look incredible, they say. What's your secret? You smile tightly, resisting the urge to say, amphetamines, Linda. But beneath the glamour and compliments, something unsettling lurks. A quiet truth that nobody wants to acknowledge. The faster you lose the weight, the more society applauds, and the less you feel like yourself. Suddenly you're chasing a moving target. Each pound lost reveals another flaw to fix, another inch to trim, another goal to reach, and worst of all, the culture tells you that thinner means happier, that if you can just shrink a little more, everything else, your marriage, your anxiety, your exhaustion, will magically fall into place. But they never do. because thinness isn't a solution. It's a distraction. It's the shiny, glamorous reward dangled in front of women to keep them striving, pleasing, performing, never stopping long enough to question why they're chasing perfection in the first place. And as you sit there, waist squeezed by a girdle engineered by someone who did not believe in mercy, you realize the truth. You didn't need to be thin. You needed to be supported, understood, allowed to breathe. But instead, you got a diet pill. Now that you're thoroughly inducted into the cult of thinness, it's time to see how your new lifestyle transforms your daily routine into a high-speed battlefield of chores, ambitions, and chemically enhanced enthusiasm. Once, you slowly sipped coffee. Now you aggressively outpace the sun. Before 9 a.m., you vacuumed, scrubbed the baseboards, ironed 6 shirts, dusted the drapes, and plotted an entirely new system for organizing canned goods by emotional resonance. Your mornings used to be gentle, a quiet yawn, a lazy stretch, maybe a moment staring out the window wondering if today would bring anything interesting. But now, oh no, now the moment your eyes open, your brain boots up like a military command center under attack. You fling the blankets back with such force that your spouse startles awake, convinced a small tornado has passed through the bedroom. Your feet hit the floor before you've even finished thinking about standing. The pill kicks in before the coffee does, which is alarming because you drink your coffee strong enough to strip paint. Suddenly the world is sharper, clearer, louder. The ticking kitchen clock sounds like a metronome driving your every action. The refrigerator hum is a motivational chant. Even the silence seems to be telling you to move faster. You start with the vacuum because the carpet looks wrong. You don't know why, it just does. You vacuum with the ferocity of a woman who suspects dust is a personal insult. You move furniture. You vacuum under the sofa, behind the curtains, inside the coat closet. You vacuum the welcome mat outside the front door, and briefly consider vacuuming the driveway before remembering you technically have neighbours. Next comes the baseboards. You never noticed baseboards before today, but now they are your sworn enemies. You scrub them until the paint shines, and you can see your own reflection glinting back with mild alarm. You wonder for a moment why you care so much about baseboards, but then you remember productivity is sacred, and your body is now a temple of restless vigour. By the time you reach the ironing board, your movements have acquired a supernatural rhythm. Shirt after shirt is smoothed and crisped within seconds. You're a textile hurricane. You iron sleeves that didn't need ironing. You iron cloth napkins. You iron a pillowcase just because it looked at you funny. The smell of hot cotton fills the house like the scent of impending exhaustion. Your mind, meanwhile, is sprinting laps around your body. You begin thinking about reorganizing the canned goods in the pantry, but not just reorganizing them, categorizing them spiritually. Canned peaches feel optimistic. Tomato soup feels melancholy. Green beans, neutral but dependable. You pull everything off the shelves with a renewed sense of mission. Soon you're knee-deep in cans, creating a grocery-based emotional spectrum that would confuse even a certified therapist. At some point, you decide the drapes need dusting. Not with a feather duster, but with a level of precision normally reserved for archaeology. You climb onto a chair, dusting every crease and pleat like a curator, restoring a priceless artifact. You even scrub the curtain rod. You do not know why. The rod did nothing wrong. Then, in the midst of the frenzy, you pause just for a second and glance at the clock. It's 8:42 a.m. You've somehow lived an entire day of activity in fewer than 3 hours. The sun is still rising, but you've already completed a week's worth of chores and contemplated a full existential reordering of your pantry. Your husband wanders in, rubbing his eyes, confused by the sound of your hyperactive cleaning symphony. He mutters something about coffee. You hand him a cup, freshly brewed, precisely measured, aggressively hot, before resuming your whirlwind. He watches you for a moment, uncertain whether to be impressed or afraid. Eventually he chooses fear. By late morning, your energy hasn't dipped at all. If anything, your productivity drive has developed a moral dimension. You rearrange furniture with the solemn purpose of an interior designer possessed by the spirit of efficiency itself. You remake the bed even though it was already made. You alphabetize a stack of mail. You sharpen pencils. You organize the linen closet by thread count. Only once you sit down, briefly, accidentally, do you realize your hands are trembling. Your breath is shallow. Your heart feels like it's tapping out Morse code. But the second you try to relax, your gaze catches a speck of dust on the windowsill, and your soul launches you back into motion. Because in the new, chemically enhanced routine of your life, rest isn't just elusive. It feels impossible, and you don't know it yet, but this is only the beginning. The next challenge? Grocery shopping, while floating 3 inches above your own adrenaline-soaked consciousness. The grocery store becomes an Olympic sport. You glide through aisles with hyper-focused intensity, buying 20 cans of soup you suddenly feel spiritually connected to, and forgetting the one thing you actually needed: butter. From the moment you push the cart forward, you know something is different. The wheels squeak, but instead of irritating you, the sound becomes a rhythmic battle cry. You grip the handle like a professional bobsledder preparing for descent. Your vision sharpens, your hearing heightens. The produce section ahead glows like a neon obstacle course calling your name. You're not just grocery shopping, you're performing. The first aisle hits you like a sugar rush to the soul. Fruits and vegetables gleam under fluorescent lights, as though waxed individually by angels. Apples sparkle. Lettuce radiates purity. You admire a cucumber for so long you start questioning whether you're bonding with it emotionally. You place it gently in your cart, whispering a bizarre reassurance you'll not remember later. Then you're off, propelled by something stronger than caffeine, stronger than duty, stronger than the dull ache of an overstretched girdle. You're in the canned goods aisle now, and suddenly the soups speak to you. They don't literally speak, of course, but they might as well. Chicken noodle whispers security. Cream of mushroom promises sophistication. Tomato shouts comfort loud enough to rattle your soul. Within minutes, your cart holds enough soup to feed a mid-sized army. You turn the corner, cartwheels squealing dramatically, and nearly collide with Mrs. Hargrove from down the street. She moves in slow motion, at least compared to you, blinking like a tortoise waking from hibernation. "Stocking up?" she asks politely, her eyes drifting to the 20 cans in your cart. "Oh yes," you say. Your voice 3 octaves higher than normal. Soup is the backbone of civilization. She nods, confused, and quickly retreats before she gets caught in the gravitational pull of your enthusiasm. Next aisle, cleaning supplies. You want everything. Bleach, ammonia, floor wax, glass cleaner, dusting spray. It all calls to you like a chemical choir. You grab them with rapid precision, convinced for one glorious moment that a spotless home is not just a goal, but destiny. You load your cart until it looks like you're preparing to sterilize a small industrial warehouse. Then the cereal aisle. Oh boy. Your eyes dart across the boxes like you're scanning for hidden messages. Cornflakes look too judgmental. Cheerios feel too wholesome. You settle on a box of Rice Krispies because the promise of crackling cereal seems deeply, cosmically relatable to your current internal state. You continue down the aisle at a speed that alarms nearby shoppers. A child stares as you pass, tugging at his mother's sleeve. "Mommy," he whispers, "why is that lady running?" She shuffles him away before you can explain that you're not running. You're simply existing at maximum velocity. You briefly pause in front of the bakery display. The smell of fresh bread fills the air, reminding you vaguely of your original mission. There was something you needed, something essential. You stand there, eyes narrowing, brain buzzing as it fumbles through your mental checklist. Was it flour? Sugar? No, something softer, creamier yellow? Before the thought can fully form, you get distracted by a stack of sale-priced bunt pans and immediately convince yourself you need one, maybe two, for emergencies. By the time you reach the checkout lane, your cart is overflowing with nonsensical purchases: a candelabra, 3 jars of olives, a pineapple, 8 boxes of baking soda, and a mop, even though you bought one last week. The cashier scans everything slowly, cautiously, as if unsure whether you're just excitable or running from the law. "You sure got a lot done today," she says. "Oh yes," you reply proudly. "I'm very productive." Internally, you're vibrating like a tuning fork. You pack your grocery bags with the speed and precision of someone training for a covert operations unit. You load the car. You drive home. The wind feels incredible on your face as you mentally pat yourself on the back for such a successful trip. It's only when you're unloading the groceries that your heart drops. You forgot the butter, the one thing, the only thing you actually needed. You stare at the bags, trembling slightly, surrounded by enough soup to survive a natural disaster. And the worst part? You're already considering going back. But before you do, the next adventure awaits. The unspoken bond you begin to notice among all the women standing at the pharmacy counter, blinking too fast and pretending everything is fine. Soon you notice a quiet phenomenon. Every woman in line at the drugstore is blinking just a little too fast. They clutch identical prescription bottles and exchange polite, buzzing nods. Nobody asks questions. Nobody has to. The pharmacy becomes a kind of unofficial clubhouse, a sanctuary of fluorescent lights, linoleum floors, and quiet mutual understanding. The moment you step inside, you feel the subtle electric tension in the air. Not hostile, not anxious, just tightly wound. Like everyone in the building is operating at 1 decibel above normal and 1 heartbeat faster than necessary. You approach the counter and fall into line behind a perfectly coiffed woman who appears calm at first glance, until you notice she's tapping her foot fast enough to power a sewing machine. The pharmacist stands behind the counter, white coat immaculate, expression studiously neutral. He's the gatekeeper of suburban energy, the quiet orchestrator of this pharmaceutical orchestra. He moves with a precision that suggests he knows exactly what he's dispensing, and exactly how popular it is. He doesn't judge. He just counts pills into bottles like a man placing dominoes, one after another, confident in their inevitable chain reaction. As you wait, you begin to observe the women around you more closely. Their hair is styled. Their lipstick is perfect. Their handbags match their shoes. On the surface, they look like the very picture of mid-century poise, but beneath that polished exterior lies the telltale jitter. Fingers drumming on purse straps, eyes darting around like hummingbirds checking for predators, breathing just a bit too quickly. You recognize it, of course. You see it in the mirror every morning. There's a comfort in it, oddly enough. You start to understand that you're not alone. Every woman here is running on the same chemically enhanced hamster wheel. Every woman here has chores that multiply like rabbits, expectations that tower like skyscrapers, and a societal script that demands constant performance. And every woman here has found the same shiny little shortcut in a pastel bottle. When the woman in front of you reaches the counter, the pharmacist greets her with a knowing nod. No small talk, no questions, just a smooth retrieval of her prescription from the neatly organised rows behind him. She signs her name with a flourish, her handwriting suspiciously confident for someone whose hands won't stop vibrating, and sweeps out of the store with the grace of a jittery monarch. Your turn. The pharmacist calls you forward. his voice calm enough to almost lull you into believing this is normal, routine, expected. You hand over your prescription slip, and for a moment he scans it with the serene expression of a man who sees dozens just like it every day. Because he does. Back in a moment, he says, though he barely needs one. Your bottle is already waiting, same label, same dosage, same instructions printed in friendly, authoritative font. He counts out the pills with quick, practiced taps and slides the bottle across the counter. Anything else today, he asks. You shake your head, but instinctively glance toward the display racks. Lipstick, gum, mints, tissues, nail clippers. Your brain briefly tries to convince you that you need all of them right now, but you resist. Barely. You sign your name. Your handwriting looks a little shakier than you want it to. He doesn't comment. He hands you your change and bags your bottle with the quiet efficiency of someone folding state secrets into a manila envelope. As you step aside, you're joined by another woman who just picked up her prescription. She gives you the smallest smile, subtle, polite, but unmistakably conspiratorial. A shared acknowledgement, a silent handshake. The kind women have exchanged for generations when the rules of society grow too heavy to carry alone. She whispers, almost too softly to hear. Keeps you going, doesn't it? Then she pats your arm and floats toward the exit, steps brisk and purposeful. You watch her leave, feeling a strange mixture of solidarity and sorrow. By the time you step back onto the sidewalk, the sun feels brighter, the air feels sharper, and your pulse hums like a distant power line. You're holding the bottle tightly, aware that this tiny object connects you to a hidden sisterhood. Women who have quietly agreed to keep functioning, keep smiling, keep performing, even when their minds and bodies are running at burnout speed. It's not friendship exactly. It's not rebellion either. It's something gentler, sadder, stronger. A collective nod that says, I see you. I know. We're in this together, even if we never speak of it. And as you walk home, bottle tucked safely in your purse, you realize this unspoken bond is just one thread in the larger fabric of your new life, one that is about to get even more complicated as your to-do list evolves from helpful reminder to religious doctrine. Next up, the moment when your chemically fueled motivation transforms your daily chores into a crusade worthy of a heroic ballad, whether you asked for one or not. Tasks that once felt ordinary now shimmer with existential importance. Cleaning becomes a crusade. Laundry becomes a calling. Rearranging a spice rack feels like fulfilling your destiny. It starts innocently enough. A simple list written on a floral notepad. Dust the shelves, fold laundry, wipe the counters. But the moment the pill kicks in, those three tasks swell into something grander, heavier, mythic. Suddenly you're not just dusting, you're defending your home from entropy. You're not merely folding clothes, you're orchestrating textile harmony. You're not wiping counters, you're restoring order to a chaotic universe, one circular motion at a time. Your pen trembles as you add more items. Organize the linen closet, alphabetize the pantry, scrub the grout, repaint the guest room. The list grows with a fervour usually found in manifestos written by political revolutionaries or very enthusiastic cult leaders. You stare at the paper and feel something close to awe. It is your destiny, your purpose, your reason for breathing. You tape it to the fridge like a sacred text, and then you begin. You start with the laundry. The clothes tumble in the washer while you sort socks with a spiritual intensity. No sock shall be left without its partner, you whisper, as though delivering an oath. You create subcategories. Warm-toned socks, cool-toned socks, special occasion socks. You briefly contemplate creating sock biographies. You stop yourself only because the dryer buzzes and your body lunges toward it, as if called by destiny itself. Next comes the spice rack. Once a humble, neglected corner of your kitchen, It has become your Mount Everest. You pull down every bottle, inspecting each like a jeweller appraising diamonds. You group them alphabetically, then by cuisine, then by threat level to your sinuses. You question why you own 5 different paprikas. You decide each has a role to play in the great symphony of flavour. You make a chart for future household reference. Your spouse wanders in at one point, eyeing the tornado of spices and laundry baskets. "Everything okay?" he asks cautiously. "Oh, everything's better than okay," you reply with the smile of someone who has seen the cosmic truth hidden beneath the oregano. He backs away slowly. Back to the list. You scrub the floors next, not with a mop, but on your hands and knees like a medieval squire polishing armour for battle. Each tile becomes a personal victory. You rinse your cloth so frequently that your hands begin pruning, but you don't mind. This is the price of greatness. Then the windows. You wash them until the glass is so clear that you briefly panic, thinking someone removed it. You wave your hand in front of it to be sure. Your heart swells with pride when your fingers leave no smudge. Midway through your holy quest, you add new items to the list. Dust the air vents, vacuum the curtains, rearrange the bookshelf by emotional journey. Before long, the list is no longer a static document. It's a living being, pulsating with purpose, expanding like a universe experiencing rapid inflation. You check items off with a triumphant flourish of a general winning battles. Each check mark is a dopamine hit, each completion a victory for civilization. By late afternoon, you are deep into tasks nobody asked you to do. You empty all the kitchen drawers, wipe them out, and reorganize them so beautifully that future anthropologists could decipher your intent like an ancient codex. You polish silverware you haven't used in 5 years. You re-roll towels with military precision. You start cleaning the vacuum cleaner, which feels absurd but also deeply correct. Eventually, hours into this odyssey, you pause. You stand in the centre of your immaculate, glistening kingdom, trembling slightly, breathing hard, cheeks flushed from exertion and pharmaceutical determination. You look at your list. Nearly every box is checked. The room sparkles. The air smells like lemon, soap, and a faint hint of mania. And yet, somewhere behind the triumph, beneath the thrill of accomplishment, you feel a tiny whisper of dread. Because you know, deep down, that the moment you finish this list, you will simply make another. Because now, productivity isn't a chore, it's a compulsion. And soon, all this glorious overachievement will meet its inevitable counterpart, the afternoon crash that hits like a Buick falling from space. Around 3 p.m, your internal battery suddenly collapses. One moment you're unstoppable, the next you're slumped over the ironing board, questioning every decision you've ever made since the 8th grade. It happens without warning. You're mid-task, perhaps ironing a shirt with the intensity of a blacksmith forging a sacred blade, when your body simply powers down. The energy that once surged through your veins evaporates as though someone pulled a plug behind your ribcage. Your vision blurs at the edges, your knees wobble. Your brain, previously sprinting a mental marathon, now feels like it's moving through warm pudding. You grip the ironing board for support, forehead hovering dangerously close to a freshly pressed sleeve, and wonder how you went from human tornado to damp washcloth in under 10 seconds. The kitchen clock ticks loudly, each second mocking you. Moments ago it had been a metronome of productivity. Now it feels like someone tapping an empty soda can with a spoon, irritating, relentless, and personally offensive. Your thoughts begin to spiral. You question everything. Why did you alphabetize the pantry by emotional resonance? Why did you buy 23 cans of soup? Why did you volunteer to repaint the school gym when you can barely lift your arms now? Questions pile up like laundry. You suddenly don't have the strength to fold. You drag yourself to a chair, any chair, and sit down with the dramatic weight of someone reenacting a Victorian fainting scene. You stare into space, eyes unfocused, hands trembling ever so slightly. The room feels too bright, too loud, too full of objects you cleaned only an hour ago but now resent for existing. Your body aches, not like post-exercise soreness, more like regret made physical. Your shoulders slump, your feet throb, your spine feels like it aged 15 years during the transition from hyperproductivity to existential collapse. You wonder briefly if this is what aging in dog years feels like. The phone rings. You flinch as though attacked by a wild animal. The sound seems unnecessarily aggressive. You don't answer. You can't. Conversation requires verbs and you have none left. Then comes the guilt. Oh, the guilt. You stare at your list, your once inspirational, now taunting manifesto of tasks. Only 3 items remain unchecked, and for some reason, those 3 carry the weight of the entire free world. You know logically that skipping them won't cause society to crumble, but emotionally it feels like betrayal. You attempt to stand up, but your legs write a resignation letter. You might be able to manage a slow shuffle, but the idea of willingly approaching another chore makes your soul physically recoil. Even the thought of making coffee tires you. So you sit, and you sag, and you wilt. You realize you're hungry, famished even, but you cannot summon the energy to walk to the pantry filled with your recent soup haul. You consider eating a cracker. Chewing sounds exhausting. You consider lying down. Getting horizontal seems like climbing Everest. Your mind, emptied of its earlier purpose, now fills with strange, intrusive thoughts. Did your mother warn you about this? Did the pharmacist look suspicious? Were you always this tired? Or is this what happens when chemical ambition stops paying the electric bill? You glance at the clock again. Minutes feel like molasses. You begin bargaining with yourself. If I stand up in the next 2 minutes, I'll only do the easy tasks. If I don't move, that's okay too. Rest is productive, right? But the voice in your head sounds unconvinced. Eventually you slump sideways, cheek, resting against the cool ironing board cover, and sigh deeply. You let yourself exist in this crumpled state, neither living nor recovering, just paused. And then, as if cued by your despair, you remember the pill bottle sitting innocently in the kitchen drawer. A fresh wave of dread washes over you, chased immediately by temptation. 'Cause you know that one pill will snap you right back into productivity mode, but you also know the crash will be worse next time, and the time after that, and the time after that. This moment, the stillness, the sadness, the bone-deep fatigue, is the whisper of your body asking for rest. But rest, in your new life, is becoming something you have to negotiate for. The crash might be hitting hard, but the evening is still coming. And your husband is about to walk through the door completely oblivious to the emotional meteor strike you've just survived. Your husband barely notices your chemically enhanced vigor. He simply walks in, hangs up his hat, and compliments the immaculate living room, unaware that you spent the afternoon vibrating hard enough to generate electricity. He steps through the door with the calm, unhurried demeanour of a man who has not experienced a single emotional spike all day. His tie is slightly askew, his shoes are dusty, and his face radiates the exhausted neutrality of someone who spent 8 hours sitting at a desk while being praised for existing. He glances around the house, nodding approvingly at the shining floors, the polished furniture, and the faint scent of lemon oil strong enough to stun a medium-sized farm animal. "Looks great in here," he says, as though the house has magically cleaned itself. You beam at him, partly because you crave approval, and partly because your facial muscles have been permanently locked in enthusiastic hostess mode since noon. Your smile is wide. Very wide. Too wide. He doesn't notice. You follow him to the kitchen, your footsteps unnervingly swift. He loosens his tie, opens the fridge, and pulls out the pitcher of iced tea you made 6 hours ago at 6 a.m, because tea suddenly felt spiritually necessary. He pours himself a glass, sips, and sighs contentedly. Meanwhile, you are standing behind him, hands clasped, aura buzzing like a beehive near a power line. He turns round and jumps slightly. He didn't realise you were that close, or that awake. "How was your day?" he asks, with the gentle cluelessness of a man who's never reorganised a pantry by emotional resonance. You want to say, "I deep-cleaned the grout, reorganised the linen closet, alphabetised the spice rack, restarched the curtains, grocery shopped in an alternate dimension, and then collapsed over the ironing board while questioning the meaning of life." But instead you say, in a cheerful tone bordering on deranged, "productive." He smiles. "That's my girl." You feel a twitch in your eyelid. He doesn't see it. He moves to the living room, settling comfortably into his armchair like a man returning to his natural habitat. He picks up the evening paper, shakes it open with a practiced flick, and begins reading. Meanwhile, you're standing there unsure whether to sit, stand, sprint, or scrub the baseboards again, even though they're already clean enough to perform surgery on. You decide to sit, then immediately regret sitting, then stand, then sit again. You smooth the couch cushion next to you for the 14th time. You try folding your hands in your lap, but your fingers twitch like they're tapping out Morse code. He lowers his paper slightly. "You all right?" he asks, brow furrowing. "Oh, I'm great, you insist, voice an octave too high, just energized." He nods, satisfied with this explanation, because to him, energized simply means not tired, a natural state he believes women achieve by, he assumes, magic. It never occurs to him that your version of energized is chemically induced hyperfocus wrapped in a light glaze of existential dread. He goes back to reading. You go back to vibrating. A few minutes later, he asks what's for dinner. A simple question, harmless even, yet it unleashes something inside you, because you planned dinner hours ago, meticulously, obsessively, with a level of care that would intimidate a Michelin-starred chef. You've already prepped the ingredients, you've timed the cooking schedule, you've arranged the place settings with such precision that even the salt shaker feels honoured. But when you tell him all this, he responds with, "You didn't have to go to so much trouble." And that's when you black out for a moment, not literally, but emotionally. Because of course you did. What else would you have done with the unstoppable thrust of your pharmaceutical motivation? Sit, rest, experience a human moment. Ha! You smile again, too wide, and excuse yourself to finish up in the kitchen, even though everything is already finished. You just need to move. If you sit still too long, your heart taps impatiently against your ribs, urging activity like a tiny rude coach. You prepare dinner with the speed of a cooking show contestant. He watches you for a moment, marvelling at your efficiency. "You're really on top of things lately," he says, admiration dripping from his voice. If only he knew. If only he saw the tremor in your fingers, the tightness in your jaw, the wild shine in your eyes. But he doesn't, because to him you're just energetic. And as you sit down for dinner, perfect posture, perfect smile, perfect table setting, you feel the ache behind your ribs whispering that this can't go on forever. The pills may make you powerful, but the cost is coming. And that cost becomes very clear at mealtime, when your hyperproductivity meets the culinary expectations of mid-century America in a dance of chaos and casserole. By dinner time, you've cooked 3 entrees, 2 salads, and a side dish you invented accidentally. You're not sure why you made so much food, but it felt cosmically necessary. Dinner used to be simple. Meatloaf on Mondays, casserole on Tuesdays, leftovers until someone complained. But now, dinner is an event, a spectacle, a culinary odyssey fueled by equal parts domestic expectation and medically induced determination. The moment you step into the kitchen, something in your brain goes click, and suddenly you're Julia Child possessed by a hummingbird. You start small, maybe a roast chicken, but as soon as it's in the oven, you feel an urgent need, no, a calling, to also make meatloaf. And while chopping onions for the meatloaf, inspiration strikes. Salad. Not just any salad, but a salad with 3 types of lettuce and a vinaigrette concoction so elaborate it could have its own Cold War classified file. The kitchen timer beeps. You leap toward it with the grace of a caffeinated gazelle. Before you know it, pots are boiling, pans are sizzling, and every burner on the stove is working overtime. You're sautéing mushrooms with one hand and beating eggs with the other, all while keeping a mental ledger of which dish needs to be flipped, stirred, basted, or prayed over. A normal person would panic at the chaos. You thrive in it. The pill turns multitasking into a spiritual experience. Halfway through your culinary marathon, you find yourself inventing a side dish, a mysterious combination of rice, paprika, and existential longing. You don't know why you're making it or who will eat it, but your instincts insist it must exist. You season it aggressively, tasting every 5 seconds. Is it good? You have no idea. Your taste buds are moving too fast to register anything beyond hot. The kitchen temperature rises steadily, turning the space into a sauna powered by ambition and butter. Your apron clings to you, your hair frizzes, and you've never felt more alive. You whisk sauces with the determination of someone preparing for a televised competition. You plate dishes like you're auditioning for the cover of a 1950s cookbook titled Domestic Triumphs for the Modern Woman. From the living room, your husband peeks in periodically, drawn by the increasingly concerning smells and sounds. "Everything okay in there?" he asks, watching as you juggle 2 pans and a pot like a circus performer. "Perfect," you chirp, even though your left eye is twitching, and you're sweating like you're interrogating the chicken about state secrets. Eventually, every available surface in the kitchen is covered with food. Casseroles steaming gently, vegetables glistening, meats resting proudly like they've just returned from war. You stand back, chest heaving, and take in the spectacle. It's beautiful, terrifying, unnecessary, but beautiful. Then comes the worst realization. The family could never eat all this. Even if the entire neighborhood came over, you would still have leftovers. But motivation doesn't measure logic, it measures completion. And in your chemically sharpened mind, the act of making dinner is its own reward, regardless of whether anyone survives it. When the table is finally set, linen smoothed, silverware aligned, centerpiece arranged with precision only achievable by someone operating at a frantic frequency, you call everyone in. Your husband's eyebrows shoot up. The children stare at the spread like it's the Last Supper. "Wow," your husband says slowly. "You cooked a lot." "Not really," you say, smiling too widely once again. It was easy. But as you sit down, the adrenaline begins to ebb, and your hands tremble with the aftershock of your culinary crusade. You watch the family pick at the dishes, unsure which flavors are intentional and which are side effects of your cosmic frenzy. You eat almost nothing. You're too wired, too tired, too overwhelmed by the sheer volume of your own effort. Yet beneath that exhaustion is a flicker of pride. You made this feast. You conquered dinner. You obliterated the expectations of a mid-century meal with fiery, unnecessary enthusiasm. But dinner is only the beginning. The real problem comes later, when the house gets quiet, the dishes get done, and you really try to fall asleep, and discover that sleep has no interest in negotiating with someone who has taken a diet pill. The pills don't just keep you thin, they keep you awake. Your nights stretch long and restless as your brain ping-pongs between grocery lists, philosophical theories, and whether you should reorganize the silverware drawer at 2 a.m. At first, you think the insomnia is just a fluke. Maybe you drank coffee too late. Maybe you napped accidentally while folding towels at lightning speed. But then you climb into bed, pull the covers up, close your eyes, and nothing happens. Absolutely nothing. Your eyelids rest politely over eyes that refuse to dim. Your breath slows, but your mind revs like an engine stuck in perpetual ignition. You turn onto your side, then your other side, then onto your back, arms folded like a pharaoh in a sarcophagus. You stare into the dark and listen to the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Only now it sounds like a Morse code message urging you to reorganize your life. Your brain takes the hint. Suddenly, you remember you need more paper towels, and that the bathroom grout looks suspiciously grey this morning, and that you forgot to rotate the mattress, and that the school bake sale is in 3 weeks. And what if your brownies, your normally very acceptable brownies, are suddenly underwhelming? Within minutes, you've mentally rewritten the week's entire schedule, rearranged your pantry twice, plotted out a new cleaning rotation, and contemplated switching laundry detergents in the name of personal growth. Sleep is supposed to be peaceful, gentle, soft. Your version of sleep is a high-speed monologue that refuses to pause. You sit up, hoping a change in posture will trick your body into relaxing. Instead, your thoughts accelerate. Your breathing quickens. You begin to wonder whether anyone really needs sleep. Maybe sleep is just a comforting myth, perpetuated by Big Mattress. Maybe you could transcend human limitations and operate on pure pep alone. But then you catch sight of the clock. 1:17 a.m. You lie back down. You shut your eyes so tightly your forehead wrinkles. You try counting sheep, but by sheep number 4 you've created a task list for shearing, categorizing, and alphabetizing their wool. You try meditating, but your mind interrupts with the urgent thought that you should really reorganize your coupons. Your husband, meanwhile, sleeps beside you with the serene indifference of a man who hasn't had a thought past 8 p.m. in his entire adult life. His breathing is soft, rhythmic, infuriatingly peaceful. You stare at him, wondering what it must feel like to fall asleep within seconds, instead of negotiating with your frontal cortex like a hostage situation. You flip your pillow. You fluff your pillow. You consider strangling your pillow, not out of anger, but out of sheer, vibrating restlessness. You can't lie still. Your muscles twitch. Your fingers tap. At one point you realize you've been flexing your toes for 10 straight minutes. Then the thoughts turn philosophical. What is time, really? Why doesn't anyone talk about the existential symbolism of canned vegetables? Is reality just a social agreement? Should you repaint the dining room? Should the dining room even exist? You're no longer thinking, you're spiraling. By 2:30 a.m, you give up and creep into the kitchen, feet shuffling quietly so you don't wake anyone. You open a cabinet and stare at the silverware drawer, the one that seemed fine earlier today. But now it mockingly whispers, "Fix me." You sort forks by size. You sort knives by moral alignment. Spoons become a meditation on order versus chaos. You know this isn't normal. You know no one should be colour-coding their dish towels in the dead of night. But the pills have rewired your brain. They've told your body to keep going. They've convinced your nervous system that rest is optional and productivity is a sacred duty. Around 4 a.m, your body finally begins to sag. Your arms feel heavy. Your eyelids flutter. You shuffle back to bed and collapse, grateful for the mercy of impending sleep. And just as you're drifting off, just as your brain loosens its grip, something terrible happens. The alarm clock rings, another day has begun, and so is the cycle. The relentless morning productivity, the feverish grocery trips, the emotional bond with strangers at the pharmacy, the cooking frenzy, the crash, the insomnia. But tonight isn't over yet, because tomorrow comes with expectations, and the pressure to meet them grows heavier the longer you deny yourself rest. Next, we explore that pressure, the cultural weight bearing down on you, shaping you, demanding perfection from a woman who hasn't slept in days. In a world where housewives appear effortlessly flawless, your chemically induced productivity becomes both a blessing and a curse. The more you do, the more you're expected to do. At first, your extra energy feels like a superpower. You glide from task to task with the grace of a ballerina and the efficiency of a factory assembly line. Neighbours compliment your spotless home. Your husband marvels at your multi-course dinners. Your children notice their socks magically match for once. You begin to think, maybe this is what being a successful woman feels like. But then the compliments start morphing into expectations. Suddenly, sparkling floors aren't special, they're standard. Elaborate meals aren't applauded, they're assumed. The moment you slip, even slightly, you feel the shift. A raised eyebrow from a neighbour when your shrubs aren't trimmed. A comment from your mother about dust on a picture frame. A remark from your husband, innocent in tone, devastating in implication. You've been so on top of things lately. Keep it up. Keep it up. 2 tiny words that pierce the fragile balloon of your sanity. Because keeping it up means maintaining an inhuman pace. It means pretending your newfound energy comes from good sleep and a can-do attitude rather than a pill bottle with a label you try not to read too closely. It means acting as if perfection is not only possible, but effortless. You begin noticing the other women more clearly now. The immaculate hair, the crisp blouses, the manicures untouched by dish soap. They smile brightly at church, at the grocery store, at PTA meetings. But beneath the mascara and lipstick, there's an unmistakable tightness in their eyes, an unspoken agreement that you do not stop. You cannot stop. Because stopping signals weakness, laziness, imperfection, and nothing terrifies a 1950s housewife quite like appearing imperfect. You start waking up earlier, convinced that 6 a.m. is too indulgent. 5 feels more appropriate. Maybe 4:30 if you want to get ahead on dusting. You tell yourself you're simply optimizing. You tell yourself other women are doing the same. You tell yourself the pressure is self-imposed. But it isn't. The magazines remind you that a good wife stays slim, cheerful, organized, punctual, and emotionally stable at all times, even while single-handedly running a household that would require at least 4 modern appliances and 2 assistants. Ads tell you that smiling through overwhelm is part of being a woman. Advice columns insist that your husband's happiness depends on your ability to maintain an impossible emotional atmosphere of warmth, serenity, and unending gratitude. Even television shows, where fictional families behave with robotic civility, teach you that chaos should never be seen, only managed discreetly in the background. If the mother characters ever feel anger, exhaustion, or frustration, they do so silently, in beautifully pressed house dresses. You internalize this, deeply, completely, and so, when you start slipping, when the fatigue from the pills hits harder, when your hands tremble too visibly, when you snap at a child or burn a casserole or leave a rug slightly askew, you feel panic coil inside you. You apologize too quickly, overcorrect too forcefully, scrub even harder, organize even more obsessively. Perfection becomes a treadmill that speeds up every time you catch your breath. Soon you're hiding signs of strain. You keep the pill bottle tucked behind the flour canister so your husband won't see how often you reach for it. You reapply lipstick before he gets home so he won't know you've been crying over a cookbook. You fluff the pillows twice before guests arrive so no one suspects you've been lying down, exhausted for 4 whole minutes. And every time someone praises your hard work, you smile sweetly, even though what you really feel is fear. Fear of slowing down. Fear of being exposed. Fear of disappointing people who never asked for this level of performance, yet now seem to depend on it. You don't realize it yet, but the perfection isn't yours anymore. It belongs to everyone who benefits from your silence, your effort, your compliance. It belongs to the culture that applauds tireless women while quietly draining them. And as you navigate this tightening web of expectations, you'll begin to see the toll it takes, not just on your sleep or your chores, but on your children, who start adapting to a mother who only has two speeds, exhausted or superhuman. Next, we step into their world and discover what it's like to be raised by someone who glows, shakes, organizes, and unravels all at the same time. Your kids adapt to your fluctuating energy levels. They learn that if you're humming tunelessly while cleaning the stove, it's best not to ask for help with homework right then. Children are observant in ways adults rarely give them credit for. They pick up patterns, rhythms, inconsistencies, and it doesn't take long for yours to realize that something about mom is different. Not bad, not scary, just unpredictable in a way that makes them tread carefully, like small scientists testing the air for static. They start to identify supernova mode almost immediately. It's the mode where you move through the house so quickly that the air seems to ripple behind you. The mode where you can clean a room, organize a bookshelf, fold 3 loads of laundry, and berate a dust bunny all in the time it takes them to tie a shoe. During supernova mode, you hum constantly, tunelessly, loudly, sometimes harmonizing with the vacuum. Your kids exchange glances when they hear the hum begin, silently agreeing to postpone certain questions. "Mom," your eldest says one day, tentatively holding a math worksheet, "can you help me with—" "Not right now, sweetheart." You shout over the sound of vigorous scrubbing, your arm moving at a speed that suggests the stove personally insulted you. "Mommy's being productive." They retreat quietly. But then there's the other mode, the off mode. It doesn't appear often, but when it does, it drops into your home like a fog. Off mode is when you slump over the ironing board or collapse on the couch, eyes unfocused, shoulders heavy. Your voice becomes soft, slow, almost sleepy. The kids don't fully understand why mum's battery drains so abruptly, but they instinctively grow gentler. They speak softly. They bring you blankets. They offer you their stuffed animals like tiny emotional support specialists. They love both versions of you. They just learn to navigate them. Supernova Mom packs lunches with incredible precision, cutting sandwiches into geometrically impossible shapes and colour coordinating the fruit. Off, Mum hands them a banana and says, "Please pretend this is nutritious." Supernova Mom insists the family do a full Sunday cleaning for fun, complete with chore charts and upbeat music played just slightly too loud. Off Mum stares at the kitchen table like she's trying to remember a math equation from 10th grade. The shifts confuse them at first. They whisper to each other in the hall. "Why is Mum wiping the walls? Maybe the walls were dirty. They look the same as yesterday. She says they felt dusty. What does that mean? I don't know. Don't ask." But children adapt. They always do. Soon they're warning visiting friends, "Don't touch that shelf. Mum just reorganized it and she'll know." They recognize the signs of incoming supernova mode. The rapid footsteps, the sudden burst of singing, the moment your eyes sparkle with an energy that makes them instinctively scatter to safer rooms. They also recognize off mode, treating it with the same reverence normally reserved for sleeping puppies or unstable chemistry experiments. One evening, your youngest climbs onto your lap during an off moment. You're too tired to move, too drained to react with more than a small smile. "Mommy," they whisper, "are you sad?" You shake your head, even though you aren't entirely sure. "Just tired, sweetheart." Is it the chores? They ask. Because we can do chores too. And those words pierce you deeper than the exhaustion ever could. Because it hits you then. They've been watching you, learning from you, internalizing the idea that a mother's worth is measured by output, by how much she can do, how fast she can move, how flawlessly she can perform. They're absorbing your frantic pace, your sudden stillness, your inability to rest. They're seeing a woman driven not by joy or balance, but by pressure and chemical momentum. Sometimes they try to keep up. They mimic your speed cleaning. They organize their toys with almost concerning precision. They call themselves little helpers in chirping voices, desperate to please, as if your productivity is a family expectation, and not a burden you're silently collapsing under. And yet, they also reach for your hand. They snuggle against you during off mode. They bring you drawings with shaky letters saying, "You're the best mommy," because in their eyes you are. Not because you clean, not because you cook, not because you organize, but because you're theirs. They love you in ways no checklist could ever measure. But you don't know that yet, not really. Because the only adults in your world giving you feedback are doctors, neighbours, advertisers, and a husband who thinks energetic is a compliment. And next comes the person who amplifies it all, the doctor, ready to help by increasing your prescription the moment you show even a flicker of fatigue. Despite your obvious agitation, your doctor suggests doubling the prescription. "You've got a lot on your plate," he says, unaware or unconcerned that you haven't blinked fully in 48 hours. You sit across from him in the tiny exam room, perched on that crinkly paper like a bird of prey that hasn't slept since Eisenhower's inauguration. Your hands tremble slightly. Your knee bounces like it's practicing jazz percussion. Your hair, once neatly set, now has the faint static halo of someone who has seen the secrets of the universe and found them deeply troubling. In other words, you appear exhausted. But not the kind of exhausted you used to be. This is the kind of exhaustion that happens after a chemical storm. Your brain is restless but foggy. Your heart is beating fast, but your body is dragging like a broken shopping cart. You've come for help, real help, hoping he'll see the signs, the twitching, the trembling, the panic, the emotional pancake flattening that comes after a week of artificially enhanced productivity. But he only sees one thing. "You seem tired," he says, flipping through your chart as casually as if he's ordering lunch. Tired. Of course you're tired. You've been living at double speed. You've been cleaning like you're auditioning for a position in the celestial housekeeping staff. You've been vibrating through errands like a sentient tuning fork. Sleep has abandoned you like a fed-up roommate. Anyone with eyes and basic empathy would diagnose you with too much going on, followed by "please lie down immediately." But he taps his pen thoughtfully. "Well," he says, "it sounds like the dose isn't quite enough. Not enough." Your left eye twitches violently. He continues, oblivious to the silent scream reverberating through your skull. These pills are meant to give you pep, not drain you. If you're crashing in the afternoon, that's a sign you're under-medicated. Under-medicated. You want to tell him that your heart is already trying to exit your body via your rib cage, that your thoughts are moving faster than human language can process, that you've reached a point where organizing Tupperware by metaphysical purpose seems like a completely rational activity. But you can't get the words out. You're too tired to explain, too wired to breathe. He mistakes your silence for contemplation. "Let's try doubling the dose," he says soothingly, as if he's suggesting you try a new brand of shampoo. 2 pills in the morning and 1 in the afternoon if you feel sluggish. It'll help you keep up. Keep up. Keep up with what? The cultural delusion that women should operate with the efficiency of household machinery. The unspoken requirement that your emotional state remain perfectly modulated at all times. The relentless pressure to be small, pretty, cheerful, efficient, and never, God forbid, tired. He scribbles the new prescription with hurried cheer, tearing the paper off and handing it to you with a paternal smile. You'll feel much better, he insists. You stare at the prescription. The ink seems to vibrate, or maybe it's your hand, or maybe it's the room. Any questions, he asks, dozens, hundreds, none you can articulate while your pulse tap dances in your throat. He pats your shoulder. You young mothers work so hard, he says warmly. A little pep goes a long way. You nod mechanically and leave the office, the door clicking shut behind you like the final note in a cautionary tale. Walking to your car, the world feels both too bright and too dim. You feel like a camera lens stuck between settings, overexposed yet unfocused. The prescription slip flutters in your hand like a tiny white flag of surrender. Inside the car, you sit motionless for a moment. The pressure in your chest tightens. The exhaustion wraps around your ribs. You know, deep down, that this isn't sustainable. That doubling your dose won't fix the root of your collapse. That the doctor has mistaken a cry for help as a request for more fuel. But you also know that you'll fill the prescription, because what other choice do you have? Without the pills, you can't keep up. With the pills, you can't slow down. You're caught in a loop designed by culture, reinforced by medicine, and fueled by expectations so old they feel ancestral. As you drive home, the bottle of pastel pills waiting somewhere in your future, one thought lodges itself firmly in your mind. If this is what help looks like, what does harm feel like? And soon you'll find out, because the more the pills escalate, the more the entire country begins to feel the same buzzing, restless, high-speed chaos spreading quietly behind closed doors. Next, the moment you discover this isn't just happening to you, it's happening everywhere. America, as it turns out, is hooked. You flip through newspapers and realize this isn't just you. The whole country is buzzing. Secretaries, students, truck drivers, celebrities. Pills promise focus, thinness, relief, energy, and the American dream in tablet form. At first, you think it's just a coincidence. A headline here, an article there. Something about increased workplace efficiency. A feature praising the modern energy supplement. But soon you see the pattern. America isn't running on hope or hard work. It's running on tiny pastel-coloured engines disguised as medicine. And everyone, it seems, is taking them. Office workers pop pep pills before tackling their towering stacks of paperwork, their typewriters clacking with frantic precision. College students swallow them during all-night study sessions, marching into exams with the manic confidence of caffeinated generals. Truck drivers chew them like breath mints, hauling cargo across the country without stopping. Alert as owls and wired as radio towers. Even movie stars mention them coyly in interviews, calling them little helpers that keep the waistline trim and the charm effortless. The ads, of course, are everywhere, more brazen than ever. Stay sharp, boost performance, be your best self. America frames productivity not just as a virtue, but as a competitive sport, and pills become the unofficial team sponsor. The message is clear. If you can go faster, why wouldn't you? Your doctor isn't an outlier. He's just part of the chorus. Articles gush about breakthroughs in mental vitality. Doctors appear in promotional photos, stethoscope draped over their shoulders like a priest's stole, endorsing the very pills now driving the nation's heartbeat. New companies spring up overnight, each offering their own version of energy tablets, slimming aids, or nervous tension reducers, all containing some variation of amphetamine, all marketed with the subtlety of a brass band. And people buy them, by the millions. Factories run night shifts seamlessly. Housewives like you burn through their chores with superhuman vigour. Students write essays at lightning speed. Even soldiers receive pills to stay awake during long training drills, because apparently what the military really needed was men who could jog across 3 states without blinking. It all feels very modern, very scientific, very American. Because beneath the shiny optimism is something darker, a culture obsessed with speed. Speed in productivity, speed in progress, speed in improvement. And these pills, packaged neatly in glass bottles, promise to compress time, shrink effort, and eliminate fatigue, the last human barrier standing between ambition and achievement. America is reinventing itself in the post-war boom, and the message is unmistakable. Success belongs to the tireless, and the tireless, they belong to the pills. As you watch the world accelerate, you begin noticing the side effects, not just in yourself but in others. The secretary down the street whose hands tremble constantly. The neighbour who reorganises her pantry at midnight. The man at church who claims he hasn't needed a nap in years. His grin a little too wide, his laugh a little too loud. The teenage boy mowing lawns at record speed, eyes dilated, sweating through his shirt on a mild spring day. They're all being lauded for their work ethic, their pep, their can-do spirit, praised for symptoms no one is calling by their real names. Meanwhile, America's collective mood shifts subtly. Conversations grow faster, expectations rise, breaks become indulgences, naps a myth, rest an inconvenience. People speak of burnout as if it's a character flaw, rather than a physiological cry for mercy. A new national attitude emerges. If you're tired, take a pill. If you're stressed, take a pill. If you're overwhelmed, take two. But the newspapers don't discuss the cracks forming beneath the surface. They don't mention the growing number of hospital visits for nervous exhaustion, the quiet uptick in dependency, the stories whispered behind closed doors about people unravelling at the seams. They certainly don't talk about the withdrawal symptoms, the trembling, the depression, the sudden collapse when the pills stop working. Instead, they celebrate the pep, the energy, the illusion of control. And somewhere between the headlines and the glossy ads, you feel something cold settle in your stomach. Because you see it clearly now, this isn't a personal failing. You're not weak or overly emotional. You're simply living in a country that decided acceleration is worth more than well-being. You close the newspaper slowly, your fingers brushing the ink, breathing in the scent of printed optimism mixed with quiet dread. And you realise, if the whole nation is hooked on pep, then nobody's going to tell you when you're slipping. Nobody's going to say slow down or rest, or maybe you shouldn't be shaking through dinner. They're all too busy shaking too. The pills have become the fuel for an entire society racing toward an undefined finish line. But soon you'll discover something even more frightening. Once that fuel becomes part of your daily life, it's incredibly hard to imagine stopping. Next comes the moment every pep pill devotee encounters eventually, the first time you try to quit. You skip a dose one morning and instantly feel like a deflated pool toy. Your body drags, your eyelids droop, and the laundry pile seems suddenly insurmountable. You pop a pill just to feel normal again. It begins as an experiment, one small act of rebellion. You wake up groggy but determined. Today, you tell yourself, I won't take one. You imagine sipping coffee like a normal person, folding laundry at a normal pace, maybe even blinking at a normal frequency. You try to remember what normal even feels like. For the first 20 minutes, you think you're doing fine. A little sluggish, sure, but you've survived exhaustion before. You give yourself a silent pep talk as you shuffle to the kitchen, feet dragging like sandbags tied to your ankles. But then it hits. Your limbs feel heavy, not metaphorically, but literally, as if gravity has doubled specifically for you. Your arms hang uselessly at your sides, your fingers too tired to grasp the coffee pot. You stare at the counter, baffled by the number of tasks suddenly required to brew a beverage. You have to measure grounds, heat water, stand upright. The thought alone exhausts you. Your eyes burn with a fatigue so thick you could bottle it. You try to blink the fog away, but your eyelids seem weighed down with wet cement. You rest your forehead briefly, accidentally, against the cabinet door. It's cool, comforting. You consider staying there for the rest of your natural life, and then you look at the laundry. The pile that yesterday looked manageable, perhaps even inspiring, now resembles a mountain range forged from cotton and despair. Shirts slump accusingly over the basket's edge. Towels leer at you from the floor. Socks mock you from corners you don't remember them occupying. You take one step toward it. Just one. Your knees buckle like overcooked noodles. You reach for the ironing board for support and sag into it dramatically, as though reenacting a tragic scene from a 1940s film noir. Your breathing becomes loud and laboured. You realise you're panting simply from being awake. A pan clatters in the sink, startling you so deeply you momentarily consider whether you're coming undone. Your heart pulses in slow, miserable thuds. You miss the sharp, clean focus the pills gave you, the way they held your brain upright like scaffolding. You miss energy, you miss motivation, you miss the sensation of movement. But beneath the longing is something darker, a tiny spark of fear. Because this isn't just being tired, this is your body staging a full-scale protest, a chemical mutiny, a physiological tantrum worthy of its own congressional hearing. It's as if your cells are screaming, "Where's the magic? Bring back the magic!" without even pretending to be polite about it. You pour a cup of coffee, mostly on purpose, but the caffeine does nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's like throwing a thimble of gasoline on a cold engine. Your thoughts remain sluggish, sticky, half-formed. Even sitting feels like a chore. The chair beckons, but the effort of lowering yourself into it is somehow too great. Then the dread hits. You realise you've only been awake for 48 minutes. Your day stretches ahead like a barren desert with no oasis in sight. Chores loom, responsibilities hover. The house doesn't care that you're unravelling, neither does your schedule, and there is something profoundly terrifying about watching your life continue forward while you remain trapped behind a wall of exhaustion. You glance toward the kitchen drawer. You know exactly what's inside. A single pill would fix this. Not fix you, not really, but fix the moment. A pill would lift the weight crushing your limbs. It would clear your fuzzy thoughts. It would put you back in motion, make you capable again, happy again, productive again. It would get you through the day. You tell yourself you're just going to look at the bottle, just look. But your hand moves faster than your rational mind. You unscrew the cap, pour one pill into your palm and stare at it with both shame and relief. You swallow it. The effects hit quickly. Your heart brightens. Your limbs lighten. Colour returns to the world. You inhale sharply, as though resurfacing after being held underwater. You stand taller. You move faster. You become, once again, the woman who can do everything. And that's when it hits you. You didn't take the pill to speed up today. You took it because you couldn't function without it. It's no longer a boost, it's a baseline. And while that truth settles in your chest like a stone, another harsher realization lurks beneath it. Soon the panic of quitting will give way to a deeper panic. The fear that something terrible might be happening inside you, and no one around you will notice until it's too late. For now, though, you push that thought aside. You have chores to do, after all. As weeks pass, a jittery unease begins to simmer under your cheerful exterior. You start to wonder if this is really pep or something darker, wearing a pastel pill coating. It starts small, barely noticeable at first. A tremor in your hands when you reach for the coffee pot. A tiny hitch in your breath when the phone rings. A thread of dread weaving itself quietly through your otherwise frantic days. You brush it off, telling yourself everyone feels off sometimes. After all, who wouldn't be a little jumpy while managing a household, chasing perfection and running on what is essentially liquefied adrenaline. But the feeling grows. It hums beneath your skin, vibrating gently like a distant alarm you can't quite locate. You notice that even during your most productive bursts, when your house shines, your children behave, and your husband comments on how remarkably efficient you've become, your heart never fully settles. It flutters. It stutters. It taps a rhythm that doesn't match anything happening around you. When you sit still for too long, a cold unease pulls in your stomach. It feels like something is wrong, but you can't pinpoint the source. You look around your immaculate living room, searching for what you missed. A magazine slightly crooked, a lampshade tilted, a smudge on the window you somehow failed to notice. That should explain it, right? Something external, something fixable. But even after correcting each flaw, the feeling stays. You start waking up with that panic already humming, waiting for you like an uninvited guest perched on your pillow. Before your feet hit the floor, your chest feels tight. Your thoughts dart too quickly. Your breath catches like a hiccup you can't swallow down. You swallow your morning pill anyway, because the idea of facing the day without it feels impossible. Your hands move automatically through your chores, but the panic remains, lingering at the edges of your consciousness like a shadow, just outside your line of sight. In conversations, you laugh a beat too late, smile a second too long, nod a little too aggressively. People chalk it up to enthusiasm. My, aren't you lively today? And you nod again, heart pounding, unsure whether to agree or scream. One afternoon, while stirring a pot of soup you made entirely out of obligation, the panic surges for no reason at all. Your hand freezes mid-air. The wooden spoon trembles. Your breath becomes short, fast, ragged. The kitchen feels too bright, too loud, too small. The smell of boiling broth suddenly overwhelms you. You steady yourself against the counter until the wave passes, and afterward you feel embarrassed, as if you've broken some unwritten rule. Housewives don't panic. Housewives don't tremble or spiral or stare blankly into a pot of soup, contemplating existential dread. Housewives push through. They stay cheerful. They stay perfect. They stay energized. So you hide it. You hide it from your husband, who is proud of your pep. You hide it from your children, who are too young to understand why mum whispers I'm fine even when nobody's asked. You hide it from your friends, who are all hiding something themselves but refuse to admit it. Most of all, you hide it from yourself. You tell yourself it's stress, hormones, weather, something trivial, something temporary, something unrelated to the little pills you swallow every morning and afternoon. But privately, deeply, you begin to fear this feeling won't go away. Your thoughts turn darker at night, when the silence grows heavy and your body refuses to calm. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling, heart fluttering like a trapped sparrow. Is this normal? Is this safe? Is this what everyone means when they say these pills are perfectly harmless? The doctors don't mention the panic. The magazines don't mention the panic. The advertisements certainly don't mention the panic. Nobody talks about the crawling feeling under your skin, the sudden sense that you could cry without knowing why, the way your mind races too fast to rest but too chaotically to focus. Instead, the world keeps celebrating productivity, thinness, energy, acceleration. So you smile a little wider, speak a little brighter, clean a little harder, hoping the noise you create will drown out the noise in your head. But the panic stays, subtle, buzzing, growing. And just when you begin to wonder whether you're unraveling, you encounter something that makes everything click into horrifying clarity. The long-term effects of these pills aren't just emotional, they're physical. And your body, already stretched to its limits, is about to send you a message you can't ignore. When you finally admit you're feeling overwhelmed, your doctor simply pats your arm and encourages you not to be hysterical. He hands you a refill before you can protest. You sit in his office trying to look composed, though your hands twist your handbag strap into a shape that suggests emotional origami. You've rehearsed your speech all morning. I'm not sleeping, I'm anxious. I feel strange. My heart won't calm down. Words that should matter. Words that should prompt care. Instead, when you voice them softly, tentatively, your doctor doesn't even look up from his chart. Oh dear, he says, tone dripping with paternalism. Every woman feels overwhelmed from time to time. It's perfectly normal. Perfectly normal. You bite the inside of your cheek. If you'd known that normal meant trembling through breakfast and debating the philosophical symbolism of canned soup at 3 a.m, you might have sought help sooner, or at least brought a witness. He finally glances up, smiling in that benevolent, dismissive way that men of the 1950s seemed to master by age 30. He pats your arm, twice, firmly, like he's burping a baby, and says, "Let's not be hysterical." You blink. Hysterical. If anything, you're the opposite. You haven't felt anything strongly enough to properly melt down. You've been floating between adrenaline surges and numbness for weeks. But apparently hysterical is the diagnosis given when a woman expresses even mild discomfort with the fact that her nervous system currently resembles a live electrical wire wrapped in lace. I'm just tired, you say carefully, and I can't seem to calm down. My heart races. Perfectly normal, he repeats, cutting you off like your symptoms are an overcooked casserole he refuses to acknowledge. You young mothers simply take on too much. You stare at him, waiting, hoping for a hint of alarm, a spark of curiosity, a flicker of concern. But he's already writing something on his prescription pad, humming cheerfully as though you came in asking for lipstick recommendations. He tears the paper free with a victorious flourish. "There you are," he says, handing you yet another refill. "Just take an extra tablet when you feel overwhelmed. No need to suffer unnecessarily. An extra tablet. Your stomach drops." You try again, voice quieter now, as if entering the polite negotiation phase of a hostage situation. "But doctor, I don't feel right on these pills. I think maybe it's too much." "My heart," he waves a hand. Waves. A literal shooing away gesture, like your concerns are stray crumbs on his desk. "Nonsense," he says breezily. "These medications are perfectly safe. They're very popular these days. Housewives adore them." "Why? My own sister takes them." You want to ask how his sister is doing, whether she too stares at the ceiling until dawn, waiting for her pulse to calm. But you don't get the chance. He's already standing, ushering you toward the door with a kindly but firm grip on your shoulder. "Trust me," he says, as he deposits you into the hallway like a parcel. "You'll feel like yourself again in no time." You blink up at him, unsure how to explain that you don't remember what yourself feels like without the pill's artificial glow lighting your nerves from the inside. But he's gone, already greeting his next patient with the same warm, oblivious enthusiasm. You walk to your car in a haze, the prescription slip fluttering accusingly in your hand. A refill, a stronger dose, a professional dismissal wrapped in polite condescension. You sit behind the wheel, staring numbly at the ink on the paper, feeling something cold and sharp settle behind your ribs. Your instincts scream. Your chest tightens. Every part of you knows this is wrong. But the world you live in doesn't trust a woman's instincts. It trusts doctors. It trusts pills. It trusts the sparkling mask of productivity that hides the trembling beneath. So you swallow your doubt. You fill the prescription. And the first night you take the higher dose, something alarming happens. You feel nothing. No joy, no panic, no relief, just a vibrating emptiness that scares you. in a way fatigue never could. Because now you're not just losing sleep, you're losing yourself, and soon you'll discover you're also losing something even more fragile, your sense of safety within your own home. Television shows portray perfect wives in perfect kitchens, never hinting at exhaustion or pain. Keep smiling, they say. A happy home starts with you. And so you do, while quietly unravelling. You watch those shows every week, shimmering black and white worlds where women glide around their homes in crisp dresses and fresh lipstick, effortlessly frying eggs, ironing shirts, and offering gentle wisdom to their mischievous children. Their hair is flawless, their voices are soft, their kitchens sparkle. They never raise their voices, never sag with fatigue, never get overwhelmed. If anything truly troublesome happens, it's resolved within 12 minutes of runtime and concluded with a laugh track. You sit on the couch, nervous system buzzing, hands trembling from the day's pep, and stare at these fictional wives like they're instructions, templates, quiet commandments whispered through the screen. This is how a woman should be, and the culture agrees with fervour. Magazine covers show smiling mothers holding pristine cakes. Radio hosts deliver cheerful tips on keeping your husband content. Advice columns insist that a real woman never complains, never grows tired, never allows her home to slip out of perfect order. Every billboard, every advertisement, every voice in the public sphere repeats the same message in slightly different packaging. Smile, even when you're exhausted. Smile, even when your heart trembles. Smile, even when you're falling apart. And you do. Because what's the alternative? To risk being labelled emotional, difficult, ungrateful, God forbid, hysterical. So you put on your smile like armour. It becomes as much a part of your wardrobe as your apron. You practice it in the mirror sometimes, adjusting the corners of your mouth to hide the tremor in your jaw. You smile at the grocery store cashier even though your hands are shaking so badly you drop your coins. You smile when neighbours comment on how lively you seem, unaware that your heart is beating like a frantic drum in your chest. You smile when your husband marvels at dinner, blissfully ignorant of the anxiety that simmered alongside the pot roast. The culture teaches you that smiling is a woman's currency, her virtue, her proof of capability. If the home is neat, the children fed, the husband content, and the wife smiling, then everything must be fine. But everything is not fine. Underneath that smile is a growing shadow, one made from exhaustion, fear, and a feeling you refuse to name. You wipe counters until your fingers ache, partly because they're dirty and partly because movement is easier than thinking. You make elaborate dinners not for pleasure, but because silence leaves too much space for panic to seep in. You host gatherings you don't want to attend because it's easier to appear cheerful in front of others than to sit still long enough to feel the dread curling in your stomach. And still, the world says, keep smiling. You begin worrying that if the smile slips, if anyone sees the crack, they'll judge you. Or worse, they'll dismiss you. So you tighten the corners of your mouth. You laugh loudly when your insides feel hollow. You offer hospitality with trembling hands. You smile through everything the culture insists is women's work, even though no one else is sacrificing themselves to maintain this illusion. One evening, while watching yet another perfect television wife solve yet another contrived household dilemma with grace and poise, something inside you breaks loose. Maybe it's the exhaustion, maybe the panic, maybe the unsettling knowledge that even fictional characters are allowed more emotional range than you. You feel tears sting your eyes, hot, unexpected, unwelcome. You blink rapidly, forcing them back, terrified your children or husband will notice. Because crying would mean you failed at the one thing culture demands most. Never show the weight, never show the fear, never show the unravelling seams. And as you sit there, rigid spine, forced smile, heart galloping in your chest, it hits you. This isn't just a pill problem, this is a culture problem. A world that told you to smile your way through suffering. A world that praised quiet sacrifice and punished vulnerability. A world that handed you impossible standards and called them tradition. And tomorrow, the smiling continues, because the next place where you're expected to perform perfection is the schoolyard. And soon, the cracks in your cheerful facade will be visible even there. Over time, the pills lose their magic. You take more to feel awake, more to feel motivated, more just to feel like yourself. And the line between functioning and spiraling blurs. At first, you barely notice the shift. The pills that once lit up your world like a 1,000-watt bulb now flicker faintly, their effects muted, weaker, sluggish. Your morning dose no longer sparks joy or enthusiasm. It simply gets you to baseline, a state that feels far more desperate than it sounds. You swallow the tablet with your orange juice and wait for the familiar surge. Instead, your body produces a small, apologetic hum, a pale imitation of the pep that once powered you through the most absurd housework marathons. So you take another, just half, you tell yourself, just a little extra push. After all, the doctor said more was fine. Everyone else seems to be taking more. And isn't it better to be productive, to be useful, than to sit there feeling like your limbs are filled with wet sand? But the second dose doesn't do much either. It nudges you from barely conscious to mildly alert, which is hardly the superhero-level vigour you once enjoyed. You sweep the kitchen floor, but your heart isn't in it. The broom feels heavy. Your motivation feels shallow. You stare at the dustpan and wonder how on earth sweeping ever felt exhilarating. The cravings creep in quietly. Not cravings for pleasure or escape. Cravings for normalcy. For the version of yourself that could outrun the sun. For the confidence that once radiated through your bloodstream, turning you into a whirlwind of competence and misplaced enthusiasm. You want to feel capable again, not like a tired woman drifting through her tasks on strings. Before long, you develop a quiet ritual. One pill in the morning, another before lunch, maybe a little extra around 2 p.m, when your body inevitably collapses like a sad accordion. You begin planning your day around your doses, timing them with the precision of a chemist. You tuck the bottle into your purse so you can access it discreetly. Your movements careful, your justification softer. You tell yourself this is fine. Normal. Logical. But the panic that once sat at the edges of your mind now creeps closer. Your thoughts run too fast, skipping between subjects like stones skimming across a lake. Your hands shake more often. Your moods swing between frantic cheerfulness and a deep, brittle emptiness that makes you stare at the wallpaper too long. You clean, but nothing feels clean enough. You cook, but the food tastes wrong. You organise, but the order never brings the peace it used to. Every accomplishment feels hollow, incomplete, swallowed by the buzzing in your chest. Meanwhile, your body begins to betray you. Your heart flutters unpredictably, beating out rhythms that don't match your breath. Your appetite disappears. Your sleep, which was once restless, is now all but gone. Nights stretch endlessly as your thoughts race, looping, tangling, fraying at the edges. You start forgetting things, where you put the keys, whether you turned off the oven, what day it is. Your mind, once laser-focused on productivity, now feels scattered, like someone shook a snow globe full of your thoughts and forgot to let them settle. But you keep going. You force the smile, you maintain the image, because the alternative, slowing down, admitting weakness, confronting the truth, is too frightening to consider. And yet, underneath it all, you feel something tipping. A slow, subtle shift from using the pills to being used by them. You're no longer the cheerful housewife gliding through her chores with supernatural energy. You're a woman clinging to the edge of a cliff, sustained by chalk dust and denial. You can sense the spiral forming. The pills buzz in your bloodstream without actually helping. The crash grows sharper. The space between doses grows more unbearable. Your emotions feel louder, more chaotic, more fragile. You begin snapping at your children for minor things. You forget conversations. You cry in the pantry for reasons you can't articulate. Your husband notices something is off. He gives you the occasional puzzled look, the kind that suggests he's wondering when you became whatever this is. But he doesn't ask, not really, because asking would imply something's wrong, and nothing can be wrong in a perfect home. So you drift, faster then slower, higher then lower, oscillating between chemical lift and emotional freefall. And every day it becomes harder to tell whether you're taking the pills because you need them, or because you're afraid of what your life looks like without them. Soon the buzz isn't just outpacing the benefit, it's drowning it. And the breaking point, the moment everything comes crashing into sharp, undeniable focus, is just around the corner, waiting for the smallest push. One morning, staring at your shaking hands while the kettle whistles far too loudly, you realize the pep isn't helping anymore. It's controlling you, and every decision starts orbiting around the next dose. The kettle's scream fills the kitchen, a shrill, piercing note that burrows into your skull as your hands tremble uncontrollably over the counter. You're not startled, you're not surprised, you're just aware of the shaking, aware of the dread, aware of the fact that you've been awake for hours without actually waking up. You reach to turn the kettle off, but your fingers miss the handle. They miss it again. You finally grip it on the third try and twist sharply, breathing out in shaky relief when the whistling stops. Silence fills the room, but it isn't calming, it's heavy, pressed against your chest like a weight you can't lift. Your heart thumps irregularly, thudding fast, then faster, then suddenly too slow, as if it's confused about the assignment. You steady yourself on the counter, staring at your hands as they twitch. That's when the thought hits you, clear, sharp, and terrifying. I'm not controlling this anymore. The pills are controlling me. It's the kind of realization that doesn't arrive gently. It crashes into you all at once, shattering the fragile narrative you've been maintaining. You've been telling yourself you're choosing to take the pills, choosing productivity, choosing energy. But deep down, in the quiet corners of your mind, you know the truth. Without them, you can't function. Without them, you don't feel like you anymore. Or worse, you feel too much like you. The tired version, the slow version, the human version. You grip the counter harder, knuckles whitening. Your thoughts scatter like startled birds. When did it happen? When did relying on a little pep become dependence? Was it the 5th dose? The 10th? The day your doctor doubled your prescription? Or was it the day you realized you couldn't face your children's breakfast without swallowing a pastel tablet? You try to retrace your steps, but your memory feels mushy, scrambled, as if everything from the last several weeks has been coated in static. You remember cleaning frenzies, grocery store marathons, PTA meetings you led like a caffeinated general. But you barely remember actual conversations, actual emotions, actual moments of calm. You reach for the pill bottle, rattling faintly in the cabinet, calling to you like an impatient friend tapping their foot. Your hand hovers in the air. You feel the magnetic pull of it, the promise of relief, the threat of what happens if you resist. The fear grows heavier. You realize that you're no longer taking the pills to feel better. You're taking them to avoid feeling worse, to stave off the crash that lurks just behind your ribs, to keep the panic at bay, to silence the pounding heart, the intrusive thoughts, the exhaustion that feels like drowning. You're not choosing anymore, you're obeying. And the pills, those cheerful, candy-coloured promises of productivity, have threaded themselves into every part of your day. You take one before cleaning, one before errands, one before cooking. You plan events around your doses. You fear running out. The idea of losing access fills you with a cold panic you pretend not to notice. You know you should stop, or at least cut back. You know something's deeply wrong, but even imagining life without the pills makes your stomach twist. Because without them, you're tired. You're overwhelmed. You're slow. And slow in your world feels unforgivable. A wave of dizziness washes over you. You grip the sink, breathing through it, eyes closed. When you open them, you see your reflection in the kitchen window, pale, wide-eyed, trembling. You don't look like yourself. You look like someone trapped. The kettle sits beside you, still warm, still humming faintly. Its shrill whistle has stopped, but the ringing in your ears hasn't. Your pulse hasn't. Your thoughts haven't. And in that quiet, trembling moment, you understand the truth. You didn't just lose control. You surrendered it, slowly, gradually, piece by piece. Until the pills didn't just accompany your day, they dictated it. With that realization comes a flicker of something unexpected. Shame. Not loud, not dramatic, just a small, burning ember in your chest. How did this happen? Why didn't I see it sooner? Why am I afraid to stop? Your breath shakes. Because you already know the answer. Stopping means facing everything you've been running from. The exhaustion, the expectations, the perfection, the culture that demands too much and offers too little, the loneliness of being a woman expected to smile through a slow collapse. Stopping means feeling it all, and that's terrifying. But even more terrifying, continuing. Because soon, very soon, the unravelling won't be quiet anymore. It won't be hidden behind a smile or disguised as pep. It will become visible, public, impossible to ignore. Your breaking point is closer than you think. By the end of the decade, whispers grow louder. Doctors begin to question the miracle. Newspapers speak of dependency, and the women who kept the nation running, buzzing, glowing, trembling, finally begin to see the truth. It doesn't happen all at once. Cultural awakenings rarely do. It begins as murmurs, subtle, scattered, half ignored. A quiet article buried on page 12 of a local newspaper. A late-night radio host mentioning misuse in the same tone one might use to discuss overdue library books. A doctor at a medical conference raising a hand to say, timidly, that perhaps giving speed to millions of people might have unintended consequences. Most households don't notice at first. They're too busy keeping pace with the rapid-fire tempo of post-war America. Cars getting faster, suburbs sprawling, televisions glowing in every living room, productivity becoming the unofficial religion of the decade. Pills fit neatly into that world. They felt modern, scientific, helpful. But systems can only run on borrowed energy for so long. Women begin fainting more frequently, collapsing in grocery store aisles, at PTA meetings, mid-conversation over backyard fences. Doctors call it nerves. Housewives call it embarrassment. None of them say the word fluttering beneath it all, addiction. The newspapers, once gleefully advertising pep for busy homemakers, start shifting their tone. Headlines appear with cautious phrasing. Overuse of diet aids raises questions. Medical experts concerned about stimulant dependency. Are pep pills too popular? Articles feature interviews with nervous physicians who look directly into the camera. Serious voices for the first time saying things like, perhaps moderation is key. It's the closest thing to an apology the public will get. And housewives, women just like you, slowly begin connecting dots they were never encouraged to examine. They notice the shaking hands, the racing hearts, the sleepless nights, the dread, the crashes, The frantic highs followed by cavernous lows. They look at the half-empty bottles lining bathroom cabinets and realize something chilling. Every woman they know is going through the same thing. Even the neighbors who seem perfect. Even the PTA president who juggles committees like a circus performer. Even the friend who swears she feels great while wiping sweat from her brow. Even the women on television, fictional housewives played by actresses who take mother's little helpers just to get through filming schedules. The problem isn't individual weakness, it's structural, systemic, designed. Meanwhile, medical journals start publishing findings that sound alarmingly familiar to symptoms you've been experiencing for months. Increased heart rate, insomnia, paranoia, dependency, emotional volatility, gastrointestinal distress, and the ever-unpleasant-sounding nervous collapse. Doctors begin speaking quietly to one another. Perhaps they should taper their patients off. Perhaps they should prescribe less. Perhaps, just perhaps, they should have listened sooner to the women who tried to say, "Something feels wrong." By the late 1950s, congressional hearings begin poking around the issue. Pharmaceutical companies bristle. Advertisers sweat. Doctors defend their decisions with phrases like, "We meant well, and we lacked sufficient data." Housewives are invited to testify, but only a select few, calm, composed, camera-ready, because heaven forbid someone emotionally articulate the reality of what millions endured. And yet, the truth seeps out anyway. It spreads through newsprint, through gossip, through quiet conversations whispered across kitchen tables late at night. America is hooked, not just on the pills, but on the idea behind them, that a woman should do everything, be everything, maintain everything, and never, ever slow down. As the truth spreads, women begin quietly adjusting their behavior. Some cut their dose in half. Some hide the bottles in drawers instead of leaving them on the bathroom counter. Some gather the courage to tell their doctors they want to stop, only to be met with skepticism but no longer dismissal. Others go cold turkey, shaking for days, sweating through sheets, waking up in terror as their bodies relearn the rhythm of slowing down. You begin to recognize the look in their eyes at the pharmacy. Not the buzzing brightness of before, but something more grounded, more somber, more aware, a collective dawning. They realize they've been carrying not only the weight of their homes, their marriages, their families, but the weight of a medical system that never asked about their suffering and a culture that ignored their humanity. And in that slow awakening, something remarkable happens. Women begin talking, really talking. Not about recipes or household tips or the latest television plotline, but about their health, their exhaustion, their fear, their experiences. They compare symptoms, they compare doses, they compare the ways their lives have quietly frayed, and they begin to understand, maybe for the first time, that they have been part of something far larger than personal struggle, a national experiment, one performed without their consent, an experiment that demanded perfection and offered pills instead of support. And as America slowly stirs from its pep-fueled haze, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The cost of productivity was women's well-being, and the women finally begin to take notice. The next moment in your story, the moment when society shifts from whispers to accountability, is coming. But first, you'll feel something even more powerful. The rising drive inside you to reclaim your life before it slips out of reach forever. As we settle into the quiet end of tonight's strange journey, take a slow breath and let the whirlwind of 1950s housewife life drift behind you. You've scrubbed floors at the speed of sound, attended PTA meetings with the intensity of a fighter pilot, reorganized pantries with near-religious devotion, and survived a medical system that looked you in the eyes, smiled warmly, and handed you pharmaceutical-grade chaos wrapped in a pastel pill. But beneath all the jittering energy, beneath the spotless countertops and the glossy magazine covers, there's something deeply human. A generation of women who are expected to smile through exhaustion, keep perfect homes in imperfect circumstances, and carry the emotional weight of entire families, all while being told their own needs were nerves that could be fixed with chemistry. It wasn't weakness, it wasn't failure. It was survival in a world that didn't yet have language for what they were feeling. So tonight, as you settle into your clean, comfortable bed, with no obligation to vacuum anything at 3 a.m, no doctor insisting you're just tired, and no cultural rule demanding your waist be 12 inches wide, maybe take a quiet moment to appreciate how far we've come. No matter how chaotic modern life gets, at least your daily functioning doesn't depend on a pill that could power a freight train. And maybe whisper a gentle thank you to the women of that era, the ones who held everything together while quietly fighting their own invisible battles. Women who navigated a maze of expectations, illusions, and impossible standards with a resilience that still echoes through time. They didn't have therapy apps, group chats, or a vocabulary for burnout. They had willpower, community, humour, and a pharmaceutical industry that really should have been supervised more closely. Because history may be messy, absurd, and occasionally hopped up on methamphetamine, but it's also proof of something tender and stubborn within us. The ability to endure, to adapt, to keep going, even when the instructions don't make sense and the expectations are impossible. So rest now, let your thoughts soften, let the noise of the day fade away. You're safe, you're steady, and you're very much allowed to be still. No pantry needs reorganizing tonight. No lists need perfecting. No imaginary doctor is leaning over you with polite concern and a sample bottle. Just breathe soften and drift gently into sleep. The world can wait. Tonight, peace belongs entirely to you.